the stock market, meaning companies, new highs.
I'm not fucking leaving. The show goes on. Nuts. They're nuts. They know nothing.
An online network called Internet.
Well, it's very hip to be on the internet right now. Welcome, my degenerates. The rest of your life starts right now on Market Mania. The no bullshit approach to all financial markets, including Bitcoin, Coinbase, and the largest casino in the world, the U.S. stock market. Today on Market Mania, we have a special guest, Jared Tendler. The Mental Game of Trading is his new book, and we are going to talk to Jared, take your questions, and give you our picks of the day. Jared, welcome to the show.
Hey, thanks, Brian. Brett, good to be here, guys.
Go ahead and tell us a little bit, and the viewers, what exactly is this book and why you wrote it?
Yeah, so basically it covers the big kind of mental and emotional issues that affect traders, right? Greed, fear, anger issues, confidence issues, and discipline. And it's kind of the follow-up to the mental game of poker. You can tell I'm not that creative when it comes to titling books, but the poker book was, something I wrote 10 years ago. A lot of traders started to pick it up after a few years. The parallels were there. I was told, just change the word poker to trading and you've got a book. It's not really kind of my style to do it that way. So I actually spent, a number of years doing research in the market. And I say market, I mean like the traders themselves, and trying to figure out like what issues really are they dealing with and how best to kind of frame it in their language and their the way they think, and found a bunch of kind of myths that exist, that need to be addressed. I've worked with retail traders for years. I've worked with a few institutional traders, so I've kind of seen it across the gamut. Whether we're trading crypto or options, futures, forex. It's all the same stuff, like mentally and emotionally, just the same as the issues we're dealing with are in poker or in golf where I came from. So yeah, it's just kind of a natural extension of what I'm doing.
So, Jared, what is the biggest mistakes? What do you see over and over again that cause people to lose at trading or to make the wrong trades? What are we doing wrong?
I mean, a large amount of it is just emotion, right? Like there's emotion that shows up, and a lot of times it's hidden. And so the mistakes that are made are, FOMO, right? You're jumping in on, positions that are moving that you're not participating in, or markets that are moving. You think about like why people buy at the tops of markets. It's a lot of that. We're talking about greed, which sometimes can be connected to FOMO. And then, on the downside, when losses start to occur, fear and anger, loss of confidence, can really start to drive a lot of things. So, I think in general, we're talking about emotion affecting decision-making. And I honestly think the biggest mistake is that traders by and large are just not that aware of the subtle signs, that their decision-making process, that their perception of their own, sort of skill set or the way that their strategy interacts with the market at that time, it has been compromised. And so then execution starts to break down. You start thinking differently about positions or opportunities, and that can lead to bigger problems. But at the beginning, that's where your first line of defense is. So yeah, I'd say if there's one problem, it's just to start to study your own emotional volatility, your own fluctuations in your decision making, the same way that you would study positions, the same way as you'd kind of back test certain strategies, right? All of these patterns that exist kind of internally, in your emotional set, in your thought process, they happen repeatedly, and if you kind of go through and analyze that, you can develop a strategy to counteract it. And, that's really what the book outlines.
So for me, talking about like trading weaknesses, I think one of my main weaknesses, at least in the past, was like thinking I missed the boat, even if you were still early on in something. And like Bitcoin is a good example of that. I had some Bitcoin at $100, dusted it playing poker. It hit 1,000 and I'm like, oh, I'm too late now. I missed it. So that was like a tough lesson to learn, but it was a really good one. And then in 2017, there were like some similar scenarios, not quite the same, but where it was like my eyes kind of opened up to like, wait, I'm not too late just because this thing went up 10x or something, because still this really small slice of people even knows about it. And in the world now, there are a lot of, I would say, like wild gains to be made. So I kind of enjoyed going through that process of just learning the lesson that like you're not necessarily too late always just because something goes up some. So that was like, yeah, I don't know.
Yeah, that's a huge lesson. I mean, I think, what I would look at, in terms of the people that I would work with or that might benefit from the book, we'd say, all right, well, like, why was your perception off in that scenario? Were you, kind of falling prey to this thing called the Dunning-Kruger effect, where you sort of falsely assume that everybody else thinks like you, or that everybody else kind of knows what you know? And so, in that scenario, people can kind of get underconfident. Now, the flip side of that is people who are so unaware of how unskilled they are, they become overconfident. So there's sort of two sides to this coin, right? Overconfidence can be produced because you don't know how much you suck. And then on the flip side, you can have your confidence be too low because you falsely assume everybody knows what you know. And, there's nothing sort of unique or special about it.
So you've also talked a fair amount about the philosophy of greed. I don't know if you want to go into that just a little bit and how it applies to trading.
Yeah, I think greed is really kind of overblown as a problem in trading. I mean, I think when we look at like what
greed is good.
Well, what are we really even talking about? Like, I think if we remove the societal impact, which I think, gets into a whole like a philosophical arguments about like, the nature of what life is about and what we're after and competition and things that are just, too big for not only this conversation, but really the book. Then we look at greed as a performance problem. And like nobody would ever say that, Tom Brady, Phil Hellmuth, the elites of any
goats,
the elites of any industry, who've been, highly competitive for a long time. Like they're not greedy. I mean, their aspirations are not driven by that, right? Their aspirations are driven by, a desire to compete, a desire to win. Right. So, as a trader, your goal is to make money. Your goal is to try to make as much money as you possibly can. I don't think there's anything wrong with that inherently. The problem where greed or the problem with greed is that it forces you to make decisions that are suboptimal, right? It forces you to kind of to take positions or to stay in a trade without taking profit and kind of violate your strategy. That's where greed's a problem. And that is no different than like, an NFL lineman, picking up or trying to pick up a fumble and run with it, or trying to score from second base on a throw that you just shouldn't be trying to stretch and should just sort of stop at third. It's like you make these performance errors out of greed, but that's not like greed in a bigger sense. That's just, understanding kind of the limitations of your skill set and, the situation of what's called for.
Jared, have you followed Alex Weiss and
No.
his trading exploits that he's been posting on Twitter?
No.
It looks like a former poker guy that has run up potentially 100 million
Wow.
this cycle, this leverage trading. Have you taken a look at this leverage trading, this leverage crypto trading that became somewhat of the new blackjack, if you will, for some of these poker players?
Yeah, no, I mean, I've certainly heard about it. I mean, I'm not a trader myself. I mean, I've got, my share of both crypto and, sort of the old school investments. But yeah, I mean, I certainly have talked to clients of mine who talk about it. I mean, it's not something that my client base is doing a lot of. So I don't have like kind of the direct experience with it. But I mean, I certainly understand the nature of gambling and trying to, make a lot really quickly.
Not a trader, book on the mental game of trading. You can just do whatever you want in this world, can't you? Anybody can be anything. Just quit your job, kids, and do whatever the hell you want, but do it well. And marketing. The world is marketing, Jared, is it not?
I think we just lost
Did we
Jared.
lose him?
Ooh,
We lost Jared.
He's back.
He's back, baby.
Okay. Yeah. So like, I'm in a position where to be like a really good coach, I just have to make a choice as to like where I'm going to allocate my time. And like, I respect traders. I respect poker players. I know how hard it is to be great at something. So, to put that kind of time into it just doesn't seem worth it to me. I'd rather like kind of invest in my own career and my own, skill set. And, I work incredibly hard to be good at what I do. And, the way I'd frame, my role with my clients and what the book is sort of positioned to do is like, a race car driver has a mechanic. The mechanic doesn't need to be as good of a race car driver, right? They just need to know how the car operates, how it's going to, the conditions of competition and where things are going to break down and how to fix it. And so, that's essentially kind of what I am for a lot of my clients is, their mechanic.
It makes a ton of sense to me.
We saw now. Do you remember sort of the other mindset gurus, Sam Chow-san or something?
Sam Chow, yeah.
What do you think about those guys? Like, because like that one always gave me like a little bit of like the bad feeling in the stomach. Like, oh, look at this mindset
your
coach.
Spidey sense is high.
Is that even anything? I haven't read your book, but I kind of like you. I would if you made me take lessons from either Jared Tendler or Sam Chow. I'm going with you, Jared. I'm just saying, not just because you're on the show. I would be brutally honest if I hated this stuff. But,
listen, man, I've followed you on Twitter for a long time. I know that you do not mince words, so I appreciate that.
But there's a lot of this. It's like in the same range of some of the stuff that I feel is like pseudoscience.
So the only thing I'll say is I've had several friends. I'm not sure whether with Jared or other mindset coaches, but they have like glowingly raved about the benefits that they've received. I believe Jared has been at least one of the ones mentioned, but
Elliot Rowe, I think, is one that I think
people have been said
too.
They've changed their life. Like they've been really positive. The people I know. So I know there's value there. Mycon, I would say.
Jared, what do you think though? What do you think about some of the like that space? But I guess you're in. I guess you're in. Sort
yeah,
of.
I mean, look, there are people who are like really good at their job, and then there are people who are very well intended, who are either too new. Like I've got a master's degree in counseling psychology. I spent 2 years, 3,200 hours getting supervised as a therapist with zero intent to ever practice, so that I could combine sports psychology and therapy into this, sort of angle that I had and sort of performance psychology. But then there's this sort of third category where I would put Sam, which is it's just complete snake oil. I mean, he's untrained, he's selling garbage, and he is bad for the market. He puts a bad name on all of the well-intended people that are out there.
You just gained like 7 points in my head. Like it's just like in my like mental rating, like you just went up big time for me just because you have to call that stuff out. You have to, if you see shit like that, then you have to call it out. I made a lot of fun of him back in the day when he was running big through the poker.
Yeah. I mean, he's talking about like, talking about like quantum physics. Like he's going to like you can.
Now you're affecting the turn card or something like,
exactly.
Or whatever.
Yeah. Right, dude. And I have like, so, and I know that there are still poker players who believe in like, the, what's it called? The secret stuff. So like the reason that stuff is complete horseshit is because if it were possible to like actually kind of will the cards in your favor, then we've basically effectively changed the game. Right now, it's not about what cards actually come out or our ability to like play them. Now it's who can will them more. Right. So there's still going to be a freaking game.
I hit flushes 64% of the time after going to Sam Chowhan's class, and I'm just saying,
it works. It works.
You'll run them.
I think there's a need to call that out, because what ends up happening is, this profession gets a bad name. Now, I am of the opinion that like what distinguishes my work is that it is more systematic, which is, kind of very well plastered on this page here, and it's become more systematized over the year. Right. So my stuff is kind of less about like giving advice about particular topics. I mean, I think I have pretty decent advice, but the book is fairly advice agnostic in that like you can apply a lot of different things out there. There's a lot of good, research and advice from many different professionals, both in trading, in psychology and performance psychology and poker elsewhere. It really kind of comes down to the system, because a lot of times people, even in my profession, right, don't have the proper understanding about how emotions affect decision making. Right, I was at a conference about 10 years ago with a room full of therapists. Okay, and the person presenting said, "Oh yeah, and this thing where if emotions rise too high, it shuts down decision making. It shuts down your ability to think clearly." And the room kind of went silent, as if they were in awe by this fact. And I'm like, "What the royal F is going on?" Because if you don't understand that emotion affects decision making in that way, then you also don't understand that any cognitive behavioral strategy, which is the primary way that people affect and control their emotions, is limited by that emotional volatility. So what happens is I give either of you some advice on how to handle your greed or your FOMO or whatever, right? And you know, in those moments where your emotions are jacked, you're going to try to think and control your emotions. It's a losing proposition. I'm giving you a freaking water gun to, you know, a shootout, right? It's not going to work. You have to affect your emotional state when it's early. That's the only time. Like, emotions have the power to shut down the part of the brain designed to control it. That if you don't understand that, right, then every piece of advice out there is going to leave you vulnerable in those key moments, and you're going to violate your strategy, and the same problems are going to keep happening again and again, right?
There's
so
some mindful meditation. Do you have, like, because it sounds like some of the same kind of things about trying to, like, you know, get into a calmer moment when things become chaotic?
So
is
that
it something you like?
That can
you
be a
don't like?
tool, right? But like, okay, so mindful meditation can be a tool for building awareness, for building like the recognition of your patterns, for gaining mental strength, right? So like, it's like going to the gym to work out your muscles in a sense. But people kind of overplay meditation as a solution. It's not a solution in and of itself. You can't like develop what I you know, kind of espouse is like true resolution, right? We want these problems to be truly solved. I mean, Brett, you talked about, you know, kind of your issue in you know, kind of thinking that everybody kind of knew or that this position with Bitcoin was just sort of gone, right? You had that insight and solved that emotional issue, right? If you are able to solve a problem like that, then it never shows up for that reason again. You might experience fear, you might experience a loss of confidence, you might experience anger, but it's going to happen for different reasons, right? So mindful meditation, mindfulness sometimes is used as a tool for suppressing and controlling emotions in the short term. And then you are now responsible for continuing to do that again and again and again and again. And it's hard to grow, right? It's hard to be really focused on what's happening in the market, right? Really allowing your intuition to kind of guide some key opportunities. If you are able to solve them at a deep level, then that problem goes away.
Let me ask, speaking of FOMO, you mentioned FOMO back there, which seems to have driven much of the crypto markets during the wild bull times. Coinbase is listing today. I'm sure that one hit your radar.
Sure.
Trader or not, you almost couldn't get away from that news if you just have devices. So do you think, just because the market is essentially a summation of everybody's FOMO, everybody's fear, everybody's everything, and you know, just all at once, when this thing opens today, what do you think is going to happen? Like, I think everybody that has a Robinhood account is going to click the buy button. You know, just the vast majority, I think, will be experiencing that FOMO and just decide, forget valuations, forget everything, just buy.
I mean, I tend to agree with you. I mean, I'm not a market predictor, but I mean, I think I've watched a lot of, you know, IPOs. I know this isn't an IPO, but you know, I've seen a lot of these, and there's always a lot of pop, especially with super hyped ones. And this is, you know, probably the biggest in the crypto space to come on the you know, the retail market. So yeah, I think it's going to be massive. But my bet is, you know, there will be pullback, because there always is. So, you know, at what level is there pullback to, and am I still a buyer at that level? I'm not necessarily sold yet, but, you know, certainly seeing, you know, like Binance just kind of blow up, you know, the last you know, 2 or 3 weeks here sort of says that, you know, there's a massive appetite for, you know, kind of getting investment on the exchange side. Yeah, it'll be interesting to see what happens on the miner side when those things sort of hit the market. I mean, I don't think they're quite as sexy as an exchange, but, you know, they might be equally as lucrative.
Brett, do we have? I see the chat has questions here. We really haven't ever done a show like this, but can you, or Tony, do you have?
I got a question then. We had a guest on earlier, Mark Herm, who was a big proponent of cold showers and hypnotism in helping him trade and play poker. So I'm wondering if you have any insight into those sort of theories.
I mean,
or strategies.
So with things like that, and again, it's like meditation. You as the user have to understand whether you're using it for short-term performance or whether you're using it for short-term performance because you're trying to suppress, the emotions that typically affect you. And if it's the latter, then there is like sort of limited upside because you're not actually correcting the underlying performance flaws that will show up, right, at certain points. So I'm not saying that it's bad. I know that there are physiological benefits to both cold showers and ice plunges and meditation, right? These are good things to do. But if you're using them solely as the purpose for, not solely, but predominantly for emotional suppression, then you're just sort of limiting your upside, and then you're forced to use them all the time. Like what happens if, suddenly, you're not going to lose cold water, but let's say your water goes out, there's a water main break, but the markets are still open. So now are you just completely F because, you're now vulnerable to that? I think that kind of superstition, ends up becoming, kind of quite limiting. I'm much more of a kind of a maximalist in the sense that, you want to be sort of as free and able to to use your senses to identify what's going on in the market as best you can. And the only way to do that is to not have to depend on things like that.
So, what about like eating right, exercise, getting some sunlight? Like that stuff seems to be, I don't know, for me, like it just puts me in the best frame of mind as whenever I'm on my game, and I'm off it the last couple of weeks. But whenever I'm on that game, I just feel better. I just feel like better about, like, I feel like I'm thinking better about trades and about really everything. Is that a part of the strat? Is that, or is you group that still more in the cold showers meditation thing?
It's a little both. I'm not saying don't have a routine that works for you. Every professional athlete, every good poker player, every good trader has routines that work for them. So I'm a big proponent of that because it does make it more likely for you to perform at a high level, be at your best, more consistently. So we are after doing that, but on the days where you don't eat as well or you're feeling off, right, you can still do the analysis to understand why. Because, you can have a bad meal. You can go without eating for, 12 hours. You can have a bad night's sleep and still be able to perform, right? And that kind of hardiness, that kind of resiliency is evident in, the greats. And so, like, for us mortals, like, we don't need we can actually, espouse those same kind of principles quite easily. So on your off days, just analyze your thought process, analyze your emotions a little bit, and try to better understand, what's going on, because you can't blame the lack of food or the lack of sleep solely on the reason for why you feel that way. Those situations just sort of unearth and expose those underlying flaws and make them a bit bigger, right? Whereas when you feel good, right, you naturally are kind of having those things kind of tampered down. And again, if you're able to kind of identify it, go through the process and solve it, right? And I'm not saying you got to, stop everything and do it. You take like 2 or 3 minutes a day to work on it at most. Then, you just become more agile just in general. And then certainly on days where you're off.
Can I come and sit on your couch and like we get into the deep final, whatever the actual solutions? Is that something you offer, or really I just have to buy the book if I want the info?
Truthfully, I wrote the book. I wrote the book with the intent of making it as close to like a one-on-one session as possible, right? So the only difference is that you kind of have to go through and correctly identify like which topics are most applicable to you. But in every topic, every section, there are descriptions of what is the most kind of common ways that people experience those issues. So, whether we're talking about, greed or a fear of losing or a hatred of mistakes or a hatred of variance, loss of confidence. Every section has descriptions of what, traders go through in those situations. So you just got to go through and figure out which ones apply to you and get to work. But the system is the same for every issue. That's the cool thing in my mind, right? It doesn't matter what we're talking about.
We want to thank you for coming on, sharing your thoughts with us today. Speaking, you said you weren't a stock picker, but I hate to inform you that now is the Market Mania pick of the day, and we're going to force you. We're going to force you, Jared. And I really do appreciate it. Very interesting show. This is the Market Mania pick of the day. You may notice the hat change. This is not investment advice. And you have to do your own research. We don't give you investment advice here. But we do ask you, Jared, put you on the spot here. What is your pick of the day?
Yeah, like I said, I'm not a trader, but I'm a big fan of Chainlink.
I'm a trader.
I'm a big fan of Chainlink. I've been following it for a while. I'm an early holder. It popped over the summer, last summer. I expected it to kind of stay there, and it has kind of tailed off. And so, being ranked 11th right now, I mean, below Doge is kind of embarrassing for it. So yeah, I mean, I just think it's got to pop 2 to 3x over what the rest of the market's going to do over the next, little bit here. So, call this a long-term swing trade. But I would be kind of buying more of it at 36. I mean, relative.
Buying more Chainlink at a $16 billion market cap. Fair enough.
I just want to see some respect on Doge's name. That is a worthy coin. All I'm going to say.
Oh my God. This is,
No
I
comment.
may actually just quit. I may just throw this in the trash. Brett, what is your pick of the day?
I'm going a little crazy here. I'm going to short Bitcoin for the first time. I recommend 10x leverage. It is ape season, but the mirror is backwards today. It's the whole buy the rumor, sell the news, Coinbase listing. I think I'm going to predict Bitcoin goes to 38K. So I'm doing the 10x short.
Wow. Well, that is not going to buy you any followers or any. That's not going to. The Brett sentiment is going to be negative today, and I'm going just with the popularist. I'm just going to go with Coinbase. Fuck it. I don't think that anything can stop this train. They're charging. I didn't even know this. They were charging 0.5% to make a trade on there, and billions and billions flying through there every day, and they are just printing it up. Don't think that anyone else is going to be able to stop them in the U.S. Kraken valuation is going to pump today, but they're the best chance. But yeah, I'm going with the coin. Just going to buy the coin on the open. Fuck it. And that is going to do it. Jared, thank you. When is you got a live stream coming up or something? Yeah?
Yeah. This afternoon I'm doing kind of like a little book launch, 4:30, my YouTube channel. So yeah, hang out there.
Jared Tendler on YouTube. Check him out on the Twitter as well. And we're going to leave you today. Thank you very much, Jared, for being on, talking to us.
Yeah, thanks, guys.
Thank you, Jared.
Yeah. We're gonna leave you on with Beck from the old school Midnight Vultures, Mixed Business. First one goes something like this. I'm mixing business with leather, Christmas with Heather, freaks flock together, and make all the B-boys scream. Like and subscribe to this show right here on YouTube, and follow us at Market Mania Show on TikTok and Twitter. We will see you tomorrow, if there is a tomorrow. But for now, it's lights out.
I never sleep if I don't have my medicine. I never sleep if I don't have my medicine. I never sleep if I don't have. I never sleep. I never sleep if I don't have my medicine. Time to right the wrong. So your hands in the air if you like the song. If you're going over there, take it twice as long. Last time ain't talking about Tylenol. Oh, I bet you'd like to know. You can come around the way if you're trying to go. If you want to switch lanes for a pot of gold or a domino, out of control. The usual. Get mad cause I'm looking at your girl. Switch it up. I do it so much louder than everything you've heard. Everybody heard at the word that the world wasn't turning. Act like you're in a jury of how we're turning, we're how we're turning. Can't lie like it's bitches to be burning. Don't act like you're in a daze. I imagine should've looked the other way. Couldn't clear space so my mind was afraid of the time. Strobe lights like in the moonlight. I'm in the mood right now, how about tonight? My interview's tight now.